This is the report. Names, dates, video, it's all there.
You serious? Oh, come on. You want me to chase every crybaby with a phone?
Someone needs to.
Turn around. Hands on the hood.
Ow, hey, I'm cooperating.
I'll file this where it belongs. Leave it alone.
You think this goes away? We'll see.
Sir, Chief?
Yep, he laughed at the...
You expect the people in charge to care, to listen, to protect. But sometimes the person wearing the uniform isn't a defender. Sometimes the one responsible for fixing the problem is the one hiding it. And when that truth cracks open, it doesn't just ruin reputations, it destroys them. This story begins with a complaint that should have mattered. Not a rant, not a rumor. A real complaint backed with dates, names, and video. A resident walked into a station, followed every rule, and filed it through the proper channels. But the police chief didn't take it seriously. He didn't even pretend. He laughed. Right there in the office. Loud. Mocking. Confident that nothing would ever touch him. You know that sound. The sound of someone so sure of their power that they forget power can be taken away. He thought the complaint would die in a drawer. He thought no one would ever see what really happened. He thought his badge was a shield strong enough to bury the truth. He didn't know a camera inside the department caught everything. Every careless laugh. Every order to ignore the report. Every joke made at the resident's expense. And he never imagined that footage would escape the walls of his own building. But overnight, it leaked. And when the sun came up, the entire city had seen the one thing he thought no one ever would. Morning sunlight settled across the streets of Brookdale, a quiet city where people commuted in steady lines and shopkeepers lifted metal shutters outside storefronts on Main Street. The town seemed peaceful on the surface, shaped by uniform lawns, modest houses, and orderly sidewalks. But beneath that routine lived frustration that many residents knew too well, especially those who felt unheard by the very officials sworn to protect them. Among those residents was a man named Marcus Hale. Marcus woke before sunrise, unable to sleep as his mind replayed the same incident over and over. He lived in a small apartment above a barber shop on Elm Street, and he sat on the edge of his couch staring at the grainy video paused on his laptop screen. The footage was short, only a few minutes long, but every second mattered. The timestamp in the corner showed it was recorded 3 weeks earlier. The footage showed flashing patrol lights, a parked car in a quiet driveway, and an officer speaking to someone just out of frame. Marcus had watched it more times than he could count. His hands clenched with quiet anger as he stared at the screen. He didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. He wanted someone to care. He stood, grabbed a folder from his coffee table, and stepped into the hallway. The morning air outside carried the faint smell of rain from the night before. He locked his door and walked down the narrow staircase to the sidewalk. Cars rolled past in slow waves, commuters leaving early to beat traffic. A bus hissed as it stopped at the corner. Life moved as if nothing was wrong. Marcus walked toward the police station 2 blocks away. He carried the folder under his arm, his steps steady, shoulders firm. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't unsure. He had done everything right. He printed statements, gathered names, even requested a copy of the police report from that night. He expected pushback. He expected bureaucracy. But he didn't expect to be ignored. Brookdale Police Headquarters sat on a clean stretch of Maple Avenue, a single-story brick building with blue trim and a row of flagpoles near the entrance. Officers' vehicles filled the back lot. A few patrol officers stood outside drinking coffee and talking quietly before starting their shifts. As Marcus approached the front door, he could feel his heartbeat slowly rising, not from hesitation, but from determination. He entered the lobby. The room was cool and bright, lit by fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. A row of plastic seats lined one wall. A clerk sat behind a glass window labeled Records. A receptionist typed at a computer near the main desk, her nameplate reading Torres. Marcus stepped toward her. "I need to file a formal complaint," he said. Torres looked up. Her expression didn't change. "Do you have documentation?" "I do." Marcus opened the folder, revealing printed sheets and a USB drive. Video and written statement. Torres nodded, then motioned to a clipboard on the counter. "Fill out the complaint form. When you're finished, bring it back. The chief will review it." Marcus took the clipboard and sat in one of the plastic chairs. He filled out every line carefully, handwriting steady, details precise. When he reached the final question asking whether he had supporting evidence, he wrote yes in capital letters. He returned the clipboard and handed over the documents. Torres placed them in a bin marked review. Marcus asked, "How long until someone contacts me?" Torres replied, "Once the chief reviews it. Could be a few days." Marcus nodded and left. He believed her. He had no reason not to. 2 days passed. No call. Then 5 days. Then an entire week. He returned to the station to ask for an update. Torres told him the review was still pending. Her voice held the same calm neutrality, but Marcus noticed the folder wasn't in the review bin anymore. He didn't see it anywhere. Something about that bothered him, but he left without comment. On the 10th day, he received a call. A short voicemail, simple and dismissive. The chief would not be pursuing the complaint due to insufficient evidence. No explanation. No follow-up questions. No request to view the actual footage Marcus offered. That was the moment he knew they hadn't even looked at it. He returned to the station again, this time with the USB drive in his hand. He asked to speak with the chief directly. Torres hesitated, but eventually led him down a hallway past the administrative offices toward the chief's door. A plaque on the wall read, "Chief Leonard Briggs." Briggs was a large man in his late 50s, hair graying at the temples, posture thick with confidence. He sat behind a polished wooden desk, sleeves rolled neatly at his elbows, a steaming cup of coffee beside a stack of papers. When Marcus entered, Briggs didn't stand. He didn't greet him. He only looked up with a bored expression, as if he had more important things to do. Marcus explained what happened. He spoke calmly, clearly, outlining the events from the night the footage was recorded. He described the officer, the incident, and the reason the complaint mattered. Briggs listened for a few seconds, then leaned back with a smirk stretching across his face. "You people file complaints every week," Briggs said. "Most of them are nonsense. This one included." Marcus didn't respond. He kept his voice level, his eyes steady. Briggs continued, "Next time you want to make trouble, save yourself the trip." Then he laughed. It wasn't a small laugh. It was loud, sharp, and mocking. He shook his head as if Marcus had told a joke, as if Marcus had wasted his time, as if he believed nothing could touch him. The sound filled the office and echoed into the hallway where 2 officers overheard and forced quiet smiles. Marcus placed the USB drive on the desk. Briggs waved it away. "Take it home," the chief said dismissively. "Don't waste my department's time." Marcus picked it back up without a word. He walked out of the office, past Torres, past the quiet lobby, and out into the daylight. He didn't slam doors. He didn't yell. He didn't say anything. But as he stepped onto the sidewalk, something in him shifted. If the chief wouldn't look at the truth, someone else would. He spent the next 2 weeks sending emails to the city council, writing to local reporters, reaching out to oversight boards in surrounding towns. He uploaded the video to a secure cloud and kept copies stored on drives in 2 different locations. If someone ignored him, he moved to the next person. If someone deleted his message, he sent another. But still, silence. Then something strange happened. A patrol car parked outside his building one night. The officers inside didn't knock. They didn't come to his door. They just sat there, watching. They stayed for nearly an hour, then drove away without saying a word. The next night, another patrol car drove slowly down Elm Street, passing his apartment twice before disappearing. Marcus noticed. He watched from his window, eyes narrowed, breath steady. They weren't intimidating him. They were reminding him who controlled the narrative, but something they didn't know was happening at the same time. Inside Brookdale Police Headquarters, cameras recorded daily activity. Hallways, offices, storage rooms, and the lobby all had surveillance. Every visitor, every employee, every conversation in common areas. The chief knew those cameras existed, but he thought they were under his control. He was wrong. The department's system stored 45 days of footage before auto-archive, and someone inside the building was watching it carefully. Not a civilian, not a reporter, Someone with access. Someone who didn't approve of what they saw. That person downloaded 3 files and transferred them to a personal drive. The footage showed the chief receiving Marcus's complaint. It showed Briggs tossing the file onto a shelf without opening it. It showed him laughing at the complaint. It showed him telling 2 officers to ignore it and to stop accepting ridiculous walk-in reports from protesters. No one knew the footage existed outside the department. Not yet. 2 weeks later, Marcus woke to a message on his phone. No name, no number, just a link with a timestamp and the words, "Watch this." He clicked it. The video opened on a dark screen. Then grainy footage appeared. A date stamp glowed in the corner. The video showed the chief's office from a ceiling angle. It showed Briggs reading the complaint. It showed him laughing. It showed everything Marcus described. Marcus sat frozen. His heart pounded once, deep and heavy. Someone had leaked internal police surveillance. He watched it twice to make sure it was real. Every second matched the day he visited. Then another message came. Send it to everyone. He didn't hesitate. He sent it to reporters who had ignored him. He sent it to every council member. He sent it to community leaders, neighborhood groups, online pages, and local residents. He posted it anonymously to a public forum. He uploaded it to 3 cloud sites and shared the links widely. By morning, the city changed. Phones buzzed across Brookdale. Residents opened their screens and watched their police chief laughing at a citizen complaint. They watched him dismiss evidence. They watched him mock the process he had sworn to uphold. The video spread from group chats to social media pages. Local journalists began requesting official statements. Radio hosts discussed it live on morning broadcasts. The mayor's office received dozens of calls before noon, but the police chief had no idea. He slept through the storm, unaware that the city was watching him in silence. Marcus walked through his apartment in a daze, listening to the rising hum of reactions across the neighborhood. People talked on sidewalks. Workers whispered across lunch counters. The city buzzed with energy. Not anger, not outrage, awareness. For the first time, Marcus felt something shift. He wasn't alone anymore. The silence he faced for weeks turned into a voice carried by thousands. At 8:30 a.m., the police department unlocked its front doors. Officers arrived in uniform and took their posts. Administrative staff settled behind desks. Torres logged into her computer and prepared for a normal day. Then her screen filled with messages, hundreds of them. Email notifications stacked on top of each other. Subject lines repeating the same words. This video demands investigation. She clicked one, then another. Her face changed. She picked up the phone and called the chief's office. Inside, Briggs sat at his desk sipping coffee. He had no idea anything was wrong. His phone buzzed with messages he ignored. He leaned back, opened the morning briefing report, and scribbled notes with his pen. Then Torres knocked. "Chief," she said from the doorway. "You need to see this." Briggs looked up, irritated. Torres placed her phone on his desk and hit play. The footage appeared. The office, his voice, his laugh, his smirk, every careless word, every dismissive gesture, captured on camera and played back for him in real time. Briggs froze. For a moment, he didn't breathe. His face went pale. His eyes locked on the screen as if staring could make it disappear. The recording wrapped up in less than a minute, but the damage it inflicted stayed heavy in the air. Torres spoke quietly. "The whole city has seen it." The chief stood abruptly, knocking over his coffee. He grabbed the phone, replaying the video, jaw clenched, panic rising beneath his controlled exterior. He slammed the phone onto his desk. "Find out who leaked it," he snapped. "Now." Torres didn't move. "It's already everywhere." Briggs paced the room, running his hand across his forehead. He realized in seconds the problem was too big to bury, too public to deny, too clear to spin. The footage didn't show a harmless joke. It showed deliberate dismissal. It showed broken policy. It showed a chief who didn't take accountability seriously. He pulled open drawers, searching for the complaint documents. The file was gone. The printed statements were missing. The USB drive was missing. Everything he ignored had vanished. He stormed into the hallway, shouting for his lieutenant. Officers watched from their desks, stunned. No one asked questions. No one joked. The building felt colder, quieter, heavier. Meanwhile, the video kept spreading. News outlets aired it with commentary. Residents gathered outside the station holding signs, not in anger, but in unity. They demanded answers. They demanded review. They demanded respect. Marcus walked toward the crowd outside the station. He didn't carry signs. He didn't speak through a megaphone. He just blended into the people gathering on the sidewalk. Some recognized him from the complaint form shared online. Others nodded in quiet solidarity. The police chief stepped outside, with 2 officers beside him, hoping to look confident, but the cameras caught the tension in his posture. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones pointed toward his face. Every reporter demanded one thing: accountability. But before the chief could speak, someone inside the building shouted for him to return. Something else happened. Something unexpected. A second video surfaced. It came from the internal hallway camera near the records room. The footage showed an officer removing the complaint file from the review bin, carrying it into a storage closet, and throwing it into a shred bin. The timestamp showed it happened just hours after Marcus left the station. The video leaked within minutes. Residents watching their phones gasped. Reporters updated headlines mid-broadcast. The crowd outside the station swelled. The chief's face went blank. He realized what everyone else now understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a clerical mistake. This was deliberate suppression of a citizen complaint. Inside the station, officers exchanged glances. Not all of them supported Briggs. Some looked shaken. Some looked ashamed. The department felt split in half, not between criminals and police, but between those who respected the badge and those who abused it. Marcus stood in the crowd, silent. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He only watched, because this was never about revenge. It was about truth, and now the truth was out, but something was not finished. Late that afternoon, a reporter uncovered a detail buried in the video. The officer who shredded the complaint wore a name tag. That name belonged to someone who never worked the records room. That meant a supervisor ordered the destruction. Someone with rank. Someone who believed the chief would protect them. This time, even the mayor couldn't ignore it. A formal investigation began. The chief was placed on immediate leave pending review, but that wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because the leak didn't just expose a laugh, it exposed a system. And there were more videos, more recordings, more evidence no one expected. Chapter 1 ends with that unresolved truth. The leaks weren't finished. Night settled over Brookdale with a heavy, uneasy calm. Streetlights glowed against the pavement, stretching long shadows across the empty sidewalks. The city didn't sleep easily anymore. Not after the leak. Not after the laughter. Not after the truth broke open in front of everyone. In homes, apartments, diners, and parking lots, people replayed the video again and again. They watched the chief dismiss a citizen, mock the process, ignore the complaint, and order it buried. The residents of Brookdale learned something important. Silence wasn't protection. Silence had become permission. And now they wanted answers. Inside his apartment on Elm Street, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open and his phone vibrating every few minutes. Messages from strangers filled his inbox. Some thanked him. Some demanded advice. Some asked for help filing their own complaints. But Marcus didn't respond. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't even feel relieved. He felt a weight heavier than before. Exposing the truth was one thing. Protecting it was another, especially now that he understood the leak wasn't an accident. Someone inside the department had broken ranks. Someone risked their job, maybe their safety, to show the city what was hidden behind closed doors. Marcus stared at his dark window as cars passed outside. The street was quiet, but he felt watched. The patrol car from earlier never returned. But silence didn't feel safe. It felt like something was waiting. Across town, inside the police station, the air was tense. Officers walked through hallways in stiff silence. Doors closed more quickly. Conversations lowered to whispers. The chief's office stood empty, lights off, blinds drawn. His desk chair sat pushed back, his nameplate resting crooked at the edge. A thin layer of dust filmed the surface where stacks of paperwork used to sit. The staff avoided looking at that door, as if eye contact might pull them into the scandal he left behind. 2 detectives worked in a small conference room off the main hallway. Their job was simple: identify the source of the leak. Files spread across the table. Login records. Camera access logs. Password change histories. Every detail of the surveillance system was under inspection. They were told the leak threatened the integrity of the department. They were told it was a matter of security and order. But they also heard the same video everyone else saw. They knew the investigation wasn't about justice. It was about control. The detectives didn't say a word to each other. They didn't need to. They understood the assignment. They also understood the truth. And neither one liked it. Meanwhile, reporters waited outside the station in parked cars with cameras and microphones. They watched the building through windshields fogged by late-night rain. Some hoped for a statement. Some hoped for another update. But answers didn't come from the front door. They moved somewhere else entirely. At 2:14 a.m., a new video appeared online. No warning, no signature, no watermark, just a 15-second clip with the title, Part 2. It showed a locked hallway door inside the station. A sign on the wall read, Evidence Room. The video showed a man approaching with a keycard. He looked around, scanned the hallway, then unlocked the door. The timestamp on the footage matched the same day Marcus filed his complaint. The man entered, then reappeared 30 seconds later carrying a cardboard box. He placed it inside a black SUV parked behind the station and drove away. The video ended there. No sound, no commentary. Just evidence. The clip spread faster than the first leak. Residents didn't just see a careless laugh this time. They saw something moved in secret. They watched evidence leave the station under cover of silence. They watched someone act without permission. The mayor woke to his phone buzzing non-stop. City council members held emergency calls before sunrise. The story reached neighboring towns, then statewide news sites began publishing articles. The police department of Brookdale was no longer a local embarrassment. It became a headline. At 8 a.m., the mayor held a press briefing outside City Hall. Reporters crowded the steps. Cameras rolled. Microphones pointed toward the podium. Rain misted across umbrellas and jackets. When the mayor stepped forward, he looked tired, unprepared, and worried. He announced the city would launch a full investigation into the leaks, the complaint process, and every piece of evidence removed from the station. He assured the public that Brookdale valued transparency and fairness. But the residents heard something else in his voice. Fear, because now the leaks weren't exposing one mistake. They were exposing a pattern. Marcus watched the briefing on his laptop. He didn't feel proud. He felt tense. He felt the pressure of something growing beyond his control. He wondered who sent the second video. He wondered what else they had. And he wondered why they trusted him to share it. The answer arrived hours later. A letter slid under his door while he was in the kitchen brewing coffee. He didn't hear footsteps. He didn't hear a knock. He only noticed the envelope when he walked past and saw it resting on the floor. No stamp, no name. Just plain white paper. Marcus picked it up, walked to the table, and sat down. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of printer paper. One short sentence sat in the center. They hid more than your complaint. No signature. No instructions. No explanation. Just a warning. Marcus folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and stared at the wall. This wasn't about one officer. It wasn't about one file. Someone inside the police department wanted the truth exposed, but they couldn't do it openly. Someone was forcing the inside to come apart. Across town, the officers on duty noticed something alarming. Their internal network slowed to a crawl. Computers froze mid-login. Printer queues jammed. Security cameras flickered on monitors, cycling through blank screens and static. The station's IT staff ran through the building trying to diagnose the problem. They rebooted servers, reset passwords, and checked cables. But the system didn't respond. Something was moving through the network, one file at a time, pulling data they couldn't see. The sergeant in charge ordered officers to secure all physical evidence. He didn't know what they were trying to protect. He only knew someone had access they shouldn't. In an office down the hall, a patrol officer named Riley sat at her desk typing incident notes into a report. She paused when her screen went black, then lit up with a single line of text. "Your silence protects the wrong people." Her pulse jumped. She looked around the room. No one else reacted. No one else saw it. The message vanished and her report reappeared as if nothing happened. Riley stared at her shaking hands. She knew what that message meant. She knew why it appeared on her screen. Weeks earlier, she overheard a conversation between the chief and a supervisor about complaint handling. She saw a file sent to the shredder room. She didn't say a word. She didn't want trouble. She thought staying quiet was safe. Now, someone knew she saw it. The department wasn't just leaking videos. It was leaking guilt. By late afternoon, a line of people gathered outside the station. Some held papers. Some carried flash drives. Some brought phones with recordings. Citizens who filed complaints in the past came forward demanding review. Some said their reports disappeared. Others said officers dismissed them. The front desk couldn't keep up. Torres processed each person slowly, face pale, voice strained. Inside, a lieutenant sat at his desk staring at a spreadsheet of officer assignments from the night Marcus recorded his video. The department began reviewing the actions of every officer on duty that week. But something didn't add up. One patrol car wasn't logged correctly. One officer signed out early with no supervisor approval. The lieutenant scribbled notes and double-checked the times. The more he looked, the more the numbers looked wrong. He printed the sheet and carried it to his captain. The captain didn't want to hear it. He waved the papers away and told the lieutenant to focus on finding the leak. But the lieutenant didn't walk out. He stood still, silent, eyes steady, and asked a quiet question the captain didn't want to answer. Why were they outside Marcus Hale's apartment? The captain didn't respond. His face tightened. He ended the conversation by sending the lieutenant home early. The cracks inside the department widened. That night, Marcus sat in his dark living room watching cars pass outside. His phone buzzed with another anonymous message. This one contained a link labeled Part 3. He stared at it for a long moment, knowing once he opened it, the city would change again. He clicked. The video opened to a brightly lit hallway in Brookdale Police Headquarters. The camera angle showed a door marked Interview Room 2. 2 officers stood guard outside. The timestamp matched the same week as the first leak. A man entered the room wearing civilian clothes, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked nervous, confused, unsure why he was there. Minutes later, someone turned off the hallway camera. The feed cut to black, but the video didn't end. It cut to a different angle. A hidden camera inside the room recorded the entire interview. What happened in that room would push the city past outrage and into fury. The man in cuffs sat in a metal chair. The officer assigned to question him closed the door, lowered the blinds, and leaned across the table. The officer didn't follow procedure. He didn't read rights. He didn't turn on the audio recorder required for every interview. Instead, he threatened the man. He told him to give a statement that didn't match the truth. He promised things would get worse if the man refused. The video showed every detail, every word, every minute of pressure on someone helpless and alone. The clip ended before the man gave an answer, leaving the viewer with a sickening silence. No one could claim misunderstanding. No one could say it was out of context. It was clear. It was direct. It was proof of something far beyond a single complaint. Marcus sat forward, breathing shallowly. The recording wasn't about him. It wasn't about his case. It was something deeper, something systemic. Someone inside the department recorded things no one was supposed to see. But the leak didn't stop there. A second file came with the video. A text document, a list of case numbers. Next to each one, a short note. Closed without review. Deleted from record shredded complaint. Threatened witness. Forced statement. Marcus scrolled through the list. The number of entries stunned him. This wasn't a handful of incidents. It was years. He closed his laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The truth wasn't falling out piece by piece. It was being pushed. Across the city, people gathered in living rooms watching the clip. They called family members, co-workers, neighbors. Voices rose. Anger grew. The trust between citizens and their police force broke in a single night. But while most people reacted with outrage, a few reacted with fear. Because if someone was capable of leaking evidence like this, they had access to everything. Files, footage, names, addresses. Inside the police station, panic cracked the surface. Supervisors shouted over radios. Officers banged on locked IT doors demanding answers. Emails froze. Hard drives disconnected from servers. Someone began pulling network cables from walls. The department tried to shut the system down, but it was too late. Screens across the building flashed with the same message. You can't erase what you already buried. Officers stared at the monitors with wide eyes. It felt like a ghost lived inside the wires. But there was no ghost. There was someone watching, someone listening, someone who knew the department better than anyone else. The mayor called an emergency meeting with the city council. Behind closed doors, voices argued about damage control, legal liability, public trust, and suspension of officers. No one discussed how to fix the problem. They only wanted to survive it. Meanwhile, Marcus opened his window and listened to the quiet streets. Rain tapped against the pavement. A single car rolled by. He felt like the whole city held its breath. He didn't know who sent the videos. He didn't know why they chose him. But he knew something else now. This was bigger than him. Bigger than the chief. Bigger than Brookdale. Someone on the inside wanted justice without asking permission. And they weren't finished. Because at 3:22 a.m., another message arrived. Last one coming soon. Marcus sat still, eyes fixed on the screen. His pulse rose. His chest tightened. Something told him the biggest truth hadn't been revealed yet. Something worse waited in the dark. Something the department never wanted anyone to see. And when it surfaced, Brookdale would learn the difference between corruption and betrayal. The chapter ends on that moment, the final leak approaching, carrying. A truth no one expected, ready to break everything open at once. Night in Brookdale did not feel like night anymore. It felt like the city held a breath it could not release. Streetlights glowed on wet pavement. Storm clouds moved low across the sky. Every window in every house looked like eyes watching for the next leak. People didn't talk about weather or work or school. They talked about the videos. They talked about the chief. They talked about the evidence room, the destroyed complaint, and the suspect interview that never followed protocol. They talked about how the truth was spreading faster than anyone could control. Inside Marcus Hale's apartment, the air hung still. He sat at his kitchen table with the lights off, listening to footsteps on the sidewalk below. Someone walked past, hesitated, then kept going. He waited until the sound faded before looking back at his laptop. The last message remained on the screen. Last one coming soon. The words felt cold, not like a threat, but like a warning. Whoever sent the earlier videos planned something bigger. They had sent pieces in order, each one worse than the last. The first showed disrespect. The second showed destruction. The third showed coercion. The next would show something the department couldn't explain away or blame on a single officer. Marcus didn't sleep. He stayed at the kitchen table, staring. At the laptop, listening to the world outside grow quieter. At 3 in the morning, the city felt smaller, like every sound traveled farther. When the next message arrived, he felt his pulse jump. The notification blinked once, then disappeared into his inbox. He opened it slowly. The subject line contained only 2 words. "It's here." No attachment, no link. Instead, the message contained instructions, a location, a time, a single request: come alone. He didn't move for a long moment. He read the message twice, then a third time. Part of him felt a sharp surge of fear. Another part felt a stronger surge of certainty. Someone trusted him with something too big to send digitally. They wanted him to see it for himself. He closed the laptop and walked to the window. The street outside was empty. No patrol cars. No headlights. He grabbed a black jacket from the hook near the door and stepped into the hallway. The city felt colder outdoors. The air carried the smell of wet asphalt and distant rain. He walked along Elm Street with his hands in his pockets, his head down. He passed dark storefronts and shuttered cafes. A neon sign flickered outside a closed laundromat. A lone bus rumbled along Main Street before disappearing into the distance. He reached the location from the message: a deserted parking lot behind an abandoned hardware store. The building stood silent, windows boarded, weeds climbing the bricks. A single streetlight flickered overhead, casting uneven shadows across cracked pavement. At first, Marcus thought no one was there. Then he heard a car door click open. A figure stepped into the light. They wore a hooded jacket, hands covered by gloves, face hidden beneath the shadow of the hood. Marcus stopped a few feet away. The figure lifted a small black drive and placed it on the ground between them, then stepped back. No words, no names, no explanations. The person turned and walked to a dark sedan parked near the alley. The engine started. The car rolled away slowly, then disappeared into the night. Marcus waited until the sound faded, then picked up the drive. He didn't stay longer than a second. He walked back toward the apartment, watching every corner, every window, every intersection. When he reached his building, he closed the door behind him and locked it twice. He plugged the drive into his laptop. A single video file sat inside. No title. No metadata. Only a timestamp from 8 months earlier. He clicked play. The first frame showed the same police interview room from the previous leak, but this time the room wasn't empty. 2 officers stood near the table. A third man sat handcuffed in a chair. He looked injured. Blood marked the collar of his shirt. His head hung low and his breathing sounded uneven. He tried to speak and struggled. One of the officers ignored him, writing something on a clipboard. The other officer leaned close and whispered something the camera didn't pick up. The third officer paced the room, pausing to look at the camera in the corner. Then someone cut the feed. The screen went black. Marcus leaned forward. He understood the pattern by now. The hallway footage earlier showed that cameras shut off moments before something important happened. The leak always provided a second camera angle that the department never admitted existed. Someone inside the building placed a hidden camera in the interview room. Someone knew the official system couldn't be trusted. The video resumed from the hidden angle. The injured man tried to speak again, lifting his head. One officer closed the blinds. Another moved behind him. The pacing officer leaned close and spoke words the hidden microphone picked up clearly. The officers pressured the man to sign a confession. They promised leniency if he admitted to something that didn't match the facts. They told him no lawyer was coming. They told him no one would believe his version. They pushed a document across the table and tapped the pen against it. The man shook his head slowly. The officer behind him tightened his grip on the back of the chair. The injured man flinched. Marcus felt nausea rise in his chest. He watched in silence as one officer slammed a hand on the table, then leaned close enough to block the hidden camera's view of the man's face. The recording continued for several minutes. When the officers left the room, the injured man sat shaking, holding his arm against his chest. He whispered to himself, though the microphone couldn't pick up the words. When a different officer entered 20 minutes later, the man didn't speak at all. He didn't move. His head dropped forward, resting against his chest. The clip ended. Marcus sat frozen. His hands shook. That wasn't just policy violation. That was abuse. That was coercion. Someone could have died in that room. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady his breath. He dragged the cursor along the timeline to check if anything was hidden after the end. 1 second before the file stopped, the screen flashed with a text overlay. A single sentence appeared before vanishing. He didn't survive custody. Marcus closed his eyes. He understood now why the leak demanded he come alone. This wasn't evidence. This was a revelation. The department didn't just dismiss complaints. It buried them deeper. It erased people. He sat back against his chair and stared at the wall. The videos were not random leaks. They were a sequence, each one building toward this. Someone inside the station chose the order carefully. Disrespect, suppression, threats, coercion, and now this. The truth became impossible to dismiss. The city wouldn't ignore a dead man. Marcus opened a secure browser window and sent the video to 3 reporters. Not the small local outlets that ignored the earlier leaks. He sent it to state journalists. He sent it to legal advocates. He sent it to organizations that tracked police misconduct. He didn't add commentary. He didn't ask for help. The file spoke louder than anything he could write. He sat still and waited. The world moved slowly for a few minutes. Then everything happened at once. News alerts pinged across his laptop. The video circulated faster than the earlier leaks. State outlets shared headlines within an hour. National feeds quoted lines from the footage. Legal analysts called it misconduct. Civil rights lawyers called it criminal. The name of the man in the room leaked next. He had been arrested 8 months earlier on suspicion of theft. The police claimed he confessed. The case closed in record time. No trial, no lawyer, no chance to defend himself. The death report said he collapsed from a heart condition. No investigation ever challenged that version. Until now. By dawn, crowds formed outside the police station again. Not dozens, hundreds. Residents held candles and signs. They called for justice. They called for outside investigators. They called for resignations. Some officers arrived for their shifts and stayed inside their cars, unwilling to walk through the line of people waiting at the entrance. Inside the station, chaos grew. Supervisors demanded answers. Detectives tried to trace the leaks. IT staff unplugged servers and storage systems. Some employees shouted at each other in the hallway. Others sat at desks in silent shock. The department realized someone on the inside wasn't trying to embarrass them. They were trying to expose them completely. The mayor called the state attorney general before sunrise. An outside investigation team arrived with badges and sealed boxes. They entered the station through the back entrance, ignoring reporters in front. Officers watched as unfamiliar faces walked through offices with stern expressions. The police chief, still on leave, received a summons for an emergency hearing. Meanwhile, Marcus sat on his couch in the dark, staring at the laptop. Every notification brought another message. Some thanked him. Some demanded more. Some accused him of attacking law enforcement. But none of that mattered, not compared to what he saw in the footage. At 10 in the morning, his phone buzzed again. A new anonymous message arrived. No link this time, no video. Only a sentence. You're not the only one they followed. He froze. The words hit harder than anything before. He typed a response for the first time. "Who are you?" The sender didn't reply. Instead, a new file arrived. This one was not a video. It was a folder filled with case logs, officer emails, and scanned memos. Each file showed a history of complaints dismissed without review. Some showed officer notes about which residents to monitor. Some showed informal watch lists built without warrants or approval. Some showed retaliation against citizens who questioned them, and among those documents, Marcus found something with his own name. A patrol log listed his address. A note from a supervisor said he was politically active and uncooperative. The note included instructions to drive past his apartment and monitor his behavior. The date matched the night he saw the patrol car parked outside his building. Marcus read the entry twice. His hands tightened. He realized the leaks were not just about a system. They were personal. Someone inside the department had seen enough. They had saved everything they could. They had waited for the right person to expose it. Outside, the crowd grew louder. News crews set up tripods and cameras. Community leaders spoke through megaphones. Residents marched in circles around the station, chanting for accountability. Officers watched from inside, unsure whether to intervene or step back. By noon, the state attorney general held a press conference on the steps of City Hall. Cameras pointed toward the podium. Reporters waited with notebooks raised. The attorney general spoke slowly and clearly. A formal criminal investigation would begin immediately. Multiple officers were suspended on the spot. The department would be placed under state oversight. The crowd erupted in applause and disbelief. In the middle of the noise, Marcus stayed silent. He watched from a distance. He didn't want attention. He didn't want cameras in his face. He only wanted the truth to stand on its own. But something else happened that afternoon. Something even bigger than the investigation. A reporter uncovered the identity of the man who died in custody. He wasn't just a suspect. He was a father. He worked at a mechanic shop on Jefferson Street. He had no criminal record before the arrest. His family had asked the police for answers months earlier and received nothing. Their complaint disappeared like so many others. When they saw the leaked footage, they broke down in tears. Their pain spread across the city like a wound reopening. People looked at their faces and understood that this wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a tragedy. Inside the police department, officers stood in small groups, whispering. Some feared losing their jobs. Others feared losing the community's trust. A few feared something worse, the possibility that the leak came from someone they worked beside every day. The department tried to locate everyone with access to surveillance archives. They tried to trace keycard logs. They tried to review server downloads, but every path led to dead ends. Whoever leaked the footage erased their tracks with professional precision. Some officers suspected IT staff. Some suspected detectives. Some suspected supervisors. No one knew the truth. As afternoon turned into evening, a final message arrived on Marcus's laptop. They will say it was one person. It wasn't. It was all of them. Marcus stared at the words. He understood what they meant. The leak didn't come from one hero or one insider. It came from more than one. People inside the department who had been silent for years finally decided silence was worse than risk. They gathered evidence quietly. They waited for the right moment. They chose a citizen who documented everything. Someone who wouldn't panic. Someone who would share the truth without twisting it. They chose Marcus. The message ended with one more line. You were right to never be quiet. He closed his laptop and sat back. The city outside didn't know his name yet. They didn't know who sent the leaks. They didn't know how deep the corruption went. But they felt the shift. The people who abused power were no longer safe inside their offices and uniforms. The truth had left the station. It lived in every phone, every computer, every conversation. As night fell, Marcus walked outside. The crowd near the station grew louder. Car horns echoed across Main Street. Some windows held signs calling for justice. Others lit candles for the man who died in custody. Traffic slowed as drivers watched the march move past storefronts and city benches. Marcus stood on the sidewalk and watched the line of people move like a wave. He didn't join them. He didn't need to. The truth no longer depended on him alone. It belonged to the city now. But something still waited in the dark, because leaks don't end until everything is exposed. And the department still had secrets. Officers still hid files. Supervisors still whispered names. Someone high above the chief had authorized the worst actions, and their name had not surfaced yet. Marcus knew the leaks weren't finished. He walked back toward his apartment under the dim glow of streetlights. The rain started again, light at first, then steady. The sound washed across rooftops and gutters. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the river. The city didn't sleep. The people didn't rest. And inside Brookdale Police Headquarters, every locked office and every sealed drawer felt like a door waiting to burst open. Chapter 3 ends on that tension. The investigation has begun, but the deepest truth has not yet surfaced. Someone powerful is still hidden, and the leaks are not over. The next revelation will reach higher than anyone expects, and the city will learn a final secret that shakes every part of Brookdale. Morning rose over Brookdale, but it did not bring peace. Clouds hung low, and the sky carried a dull gray weight that seemed to press against rooftops and street signs. Cars moved slowly along wet roads. People walked with tired expressions, scanning sidewalks and windows as if expecting something else to break loose. The city no longer trusted quiet moments. Too much had happened in the dark. Too many truths surfaced when no one expected them. Inside the police station, officers waited for orders that never came. Supervisors moved through hallways with forced confidence that fooled no one. Doors opened and closed with uneasy force. Conversations died the moment someone walked past. The building no longer felt like a place of authority. It felt like a cage shrinking from the inside. The state investigators returned before noon. They entered with stacks of sealed evidence bags and empty boxes waiting to be filled. They did not greet the officers. They did not explain their purpose. They walked room to room, collecting computer towers, folders, flash drives, and storage drives from locked cabinets. Some officers tried to ask questions, but the investigators ignored them. The department's control was gone. Outside, crowds gathered again. The third leak changed everything. When residents learned a man died during an interview, they demanded more than suspension. They demanded charges. They wanted the names of the officers involved. They wanted to know who signed the report claiming he died from medical complications. They wanted to know how something like that could be erased without anyone asking questions. In the middle of all the noise, Marcus stayed inside his apartment. His lights remained off. His blinds stayed closed. He sat on the edge of his couch with his laptop open and his phone resting beside it. He expected another message from the same anonymous source, but none arrived. Hours passed. Afternoon rolled toward evening. The silence felt strange. It felt like a missing piece. Then his phone buzzed. A new email appeared with no subject and no sender name. 2 words waited inside. Check the news. Marcus opened a browser window. Every major outlet carried the same headline. The state investigators discovered missing case files behind a false wall inside the basement storage room of the station. Dozens of documents had been hidden where official audits could never find them. Some were reports from angry residents. Others were internal memos written by officers who tried to report misconduct. Every file told the same story. Complaints never reviewed, evidence never logged, officers never held accountable. One file stood out among the rest, a copy of the custody incident from 8 months earlier. The report described the injured man as uncooperative and violent. The video proved the opposite. Someone wrote a false narrative and pushed it through the system, and above the signature on the report sat a name no one expected. Deputy Chief Raymond Locke. Locke wasn't suspended like the chief. He wasn't interviewed or questioned. He had been silent since the first leak. He stayed out of sight while everyone blamed the chief. But the hidden files revealed something new. Locke authorized the destruction of multiple complaints. He ordered surveillance of residents who filed reports. He approved the suppression of the interview footage. He controlled the story. The investigation took a sharp turn. At 3 in the afternoon, investigators tried to locate Locke. He was not at his home. He was not at the station. His patrol vehicle was missing. His phone went straight to voicemail. Officers whispered theories. Some said he fled. Others said he planned something worse. The city sensed movement behind the scenes, but no one knew where Locke went. While the station scrambled to track him down, another leak appeared online. No one sent it to Marcus. It surfaced on a public site at random. The clip showed a meeting inside a conference room at the station. Locke sat at the far end of the table beside the chief. A supervisor asked about missing complaint records from the previous month. Locke told him to stop accepting civilian walk-ins with cameras. The chief laughed. Locke didn't. He only said one thing. If they want answers, they can go to another city. The clip ended. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. The city heard a truth clearer than the rest. The chief mocked the process. Locke controlled it. The chief dismissed people. Locke punished them. The chief was a face. Locke was a system. Residents outside the station changed their chants. They no longer demanded the chief's resignation. They demanded the deputy chief's arrest. Inside the apartment, Marcus watched the news feed without emotion. He didn't feel victory. He didn't feel relief. He felt tired, like the city carried a weight too heavy for anyone to lift alone. He stood from the couch, walked to the window, and opened the blinds enough to see the street. Cars crawled along the road. People gathered near storefronts talking in urgent voices. The leaks changed everything, but no one knew who was responsible. The city wanted a name. They wanted a face. They wanted someone to thank or someone to protect. Marcus closed the blinds again. He sat at the table and folded his hands. He never wanted attention. He only wanted someone to care. The leaks didn't make him a leader. They made him a witness, a messenger, a link between silence and truth. The next message came quietly. A text arrived on his phone with a new number. There were no words, only another address, a city office building near the river, the old municipal archive. The message included a time. Midnight. Marcus stared at the screen. He didn't want to go. He felt worn down from sleepless nights and constant tension. But the person who sent the leaks trusted him. He could not stop now. He grabbed his jacket and walked down the stairs into the cool evening air. The city felt restless. Police sirens echoed far away. Distant cheers from the crowd near the station floated down the street. Marcus kept his head down and moved through alleyways to avoid the busiest roads. The municipal archive sat beside a dark parking lot behind old stone walls and rusted iron gates. Few people ever visited that building. Most records were digital now. Whatever waited inside belonged to the past. The front door was unlocked. Marcus pushed it open slowly. The lobby lights were off. A faint glow spilled through the hallway ahead. He walked inside, footsteps echoing across dusty tile. The building smelled of old paper and cold stone. He followed the glow until he reached a small records room with boxes stacked to the ceiling. A single desk lamp lit the space. A woman stood near the desk. Her uniform marked her as a department clerk, someone who managed storage requests and document transfers. She looked nervous, her hands shaking as she lifted a box onto the desk. When she saw Marcus, she exhaled with relief. "You're Marcus Hale," she said quietly. He nodded. She opened the box. Inside sat stacks of paper files, interview transcripts, handwritten complaints, and internal memos. She pulled out one folder and placed it in front of him. The name on the cover belonged to the man who died in custody. "This is the original report," she said. "The one before they changed it." Marcus opened the folder. The report told a different story. The man asked for a lawyer. He asked for medical help. He said he was innocent. The officer who interviewed him wrote a truthful record that was never submitted. The department replaced it with a false version and hid the real report here. The clerk pulled out another file. It contained audio recordings from police dispatch the night the man was arrested. The recordings revealed he called 911 himself to report someone breaking into his car. When officers arrived, they accused him of theft instead. They never investigated the actual crime. She placed another file on the table. More victims. More hidden reports. "I've worked in this department for 12 years, she said. Not every officer is corrupt. Not every case was buried. But the ones they wanted gone always ended up here. Marcus felt a chill move through him. The leak wasn't just video. It was every piece of paper the department thought it erased. Before he could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy, slow, deliberate. The clerk's eyes widened. Marcus turned off the desk lamp and pulled the files back into the box. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved across the hallway wall. Someone was coming. The clerk pointed toward a side door. Marcus grabbed the box and followed her. They slipped into a narrow maintenance corridor lined with old wiring and dusty pipes. The clerk closed the door quietly and locked it. Someone tried the main records room door on the other side. The handle rattled. A man's voice spoke through the crack. "Open the door." The clerk shook her head. She whispered to Marcus. "That's him. Deputy Chief Raymond Locke." Marcus held his breath. The deputy chief rattled the door again, harder this time. The clerk signaled Marcus to move quickly down the corridor. They walked through darkness until they reached a rear exit. She unlocked it with a key from her badge lanyard and pushed the door open. The cold night air rushed in. "You need to leave," she whispered. Now Marcus hesitated. "What about you?" She shook her head. "I can't leave." "Not yet." He didn't argue. He took the box, stepped into the alley, and closed the door behind him. The street was empty. Rain began to fall again. He moved quickly along the back of the building, heading toward the river where streetlights reflected against the water. The files inside the box felt heavier with every step. He passed under a bridge, keeping to the shadows. Halfway across the riverwalk, he noticed headlights behind him. A dark SUV crawled along the road, slowing as it reached the walkway. He recognized the license plate pattern. Police fleet. The vehicle stopped. The driver's door opened. Deputy Chief Locke stepped out. His face looked tense, pale, eyes sharp even under dim streetlight. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He only walked forward slowly. Marcus backed away. Locke kept coming. "You should put that box down," Locke said. His voice was calm, quiet, and steady. Marcus didn't respond. "That box contains state evidence," Locke continued. "Possession of it is a crime. You don't want to spend your life fighting charges you don't understand." Marcus watched him approach. He saw something on Locke's face he never saw on the chief. Fear. Not fear of exposure. Fear of collapse. Fear of losing control. "The leaks are over," Locke said. "You cannot win this." Marcus didn't speak. He held the box tightly and stepped backward onto the bridge. Locke took another step, then stopped. He looked at Marcus with a strange expression, like a man trying to recognize something familiar. "You should have stayed quiet," Locke said. Marcus turned and ran. Locke shouted for him to stop, but Marcus sprinted across the bridge, rain striking his face. Tires screeched behind him. The SUV turned onto the bridge and accelerated. Marcus didn't look back. He reached the far end and darted into a side street. The SUV swerved to follow. He heard the engine roar. The box of files hit his side with every step. His lungs burned. His legs shook. But he didn't stop. At the end of the alley, a crowd stood outside a coffee shop watching news on a sidewalk television. Marcus burst into the open. People turned. Some recognized him from leaked reports. The SUV skidded to a stop behind him. Locke stepped out again, but faces turned toward him. Phones lifted. Cameras recorded. Locke froze. His expression changed from anger to panic. He turned, got back in the SUV, and drove away before anyone approached. Marcus stood in the rain, gasping for breath. The crowd surrounded him. Someone asked if he was okay. Someone else tried to pull him inside to get warm. He shook his head and held up the box. "They hid everything here," he said. People stared. A few stepped forward and helped him carry the box toward the lights of the coffee shop. Someone called the investigators. Within 20 minutes, the state attorney general's team arrived with sealed evidence bags. They took the files. They interviewed the clerk from the archive. They issued a warrant for Deputy Chief Locke's arrest. Before sunrise, Locke was found in his SUV on the county highway, attempting to leave the state. Officers surrounded the vehicle and pulled him out in handcuffs. Residents recorded the moment on their phones. The footage spread faster than any of the earlier leaks. Marcus sat on a bench near the river, exhausted. The state investigators returned to speak with him. They thanked him, but he did not respond. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a witness who survived something much larger than himself. The files were safe now. The truth could no longer be buried. As the sun lifted over the city, news stations broadcast the arrest. The chief resigned. Multiple officers were charged. The family of the man who died received a personal apology from the state attorney general. The governor issued a statement calling for full reform of the Brookdale Police Department and promised oversight for years to come. Residents filled the streets, not with anger, but with relief. People held candles again, but this time they stood closer together. The corruption was exposed. Justice was coming. The city would rebuild trust one step at a time. Marcus walked home as dawn lit the wet pavement. Elm Street looked different. Quiet, but not silent. Calm, but not weak. Neighbors stepped out of their houses and nodded to him. Someone placed a hand on his shoulder. Someone else said, "Thank you," in a soft whisper. He reached his apartment and climbed the stairs. Inside, he sat at his kitchen table and set his phone down. It vibrated one more time. A final message arrived. We didn't need leaders. We only needed the truth. Rest now. Marcus closed the phone and leaned back. For the first time in weeks, his hands stopped shaking. The storm had passed. The city had changed. And the truth no longer belonged to one person. It belonged to all of them. You saw it unfold in silence, piece by piece. Not with shouting, not with threats, with truth. One video at a time, one file at a time. A system that thought it was untouchable collapsed because people paid attention, because someone refused to stay quiet, because someone else inside the department chose honesty over loyalty. And when the truth finally reached the streets, the badge stopped protecting the ones who betrayed it. Brookdale learned something important. Power doesn't disappear when citizens speak. It grows. It grows when people record what others hope to hide. It grows when someone files a complaint that doesn't get buried. It grows when proof leaves the building and lands in the hands of the public. You don't have to be loud to move the world. Sometimes all you need is evidence and the courage to share it. And if you want more stories like this, you already know what to do. There's another video coming, a new investigation, a new truth that someone hoped would stay hidden. You won't want to miss it, and if you want the free resource we made for the channel, it's waiting for you. A simple guide that shows what to record, what to save, and how to protect yourself if someone tries to make your complaint disappear. You can get it right now. No cost, no catch. The link is below. Stay sharp, stay aware, and remember what happened in Brookdale. When the truth leaks, no one can stop it.